The question is, if questions 8 and 9 of 13 are missing and then are found, do they remain questions 8 and 9, or do they instead become questions 1 and 2? People, welcome back to my channel, my second ever YouTube video, but I did forget questions 8 and 9 of the AuthorTube newbie tag questions. So I'm here to remedy that very serious problem, and this is my buddy for today. Sorry, this is Romeo. He is a Yorkie, and he is almost 4 years old. Come you? Yeah. Okay, so question 8, which I've already forgotten. Question 8, or is it question 1, is when did I start writing? So, interestingly enough, I did write super angsty poetry throughout middle school and high school, as you do. But I can't recall ever writing a creative story. I went to high school. In fact, I was in Canada, which at the time had 5 years of high school, so I went to grade 13, and I don't recall writing ever writing a creative story. And then I even went to university. No creative stories. So my first ever attempt was in 2002. My family and I were driving up into the mountains to, and I know this isn't exactly the answer to the question, but hey, this is my story and I'm sticking to it. We were driving up into the mountains, and it was autumn, and the leaves were beautiful, and our boys were in the back seat, and everything was just happy, happy, joy, joy. And so my husband, David, and I were talking, and we have the best conversations when we're driving. And I just realized my mic was nowhere near me, so I hope that you can hear me okay. All right, so, and now Mio has to lick the mic. Okay, so I think out of the blue, I said, I've always wanted to write a book like the Fiona of Our Tapestry, which, if you watched my first video, is Guy Gabriel Kay's series that involves the summer tree, I don't have, for some reason I can't find the summer tree. I think I must have lent it to somebody, so therefore I must buy a new one. But so the second, no, I can't find the darkest something. Can't remember the last book, because these are the first two. So here's Summer Tree. Okay, anyways, they are incredible, beautiful, amazing, awesome books. And as I stated before, I don't actually write like Guy Gabriel Kay, but I highly recommend this series. So anyway, so that's what I said. And I think my husband said something along the lines of, "Oh, really? What would your story be about?" And then I replied, "Well, I've always wanted to write the story of my D&D character from university, right? Because who didn't play D&D at university? My husband is one. He never played. And I can't claim any kind of like super awesome D&D-ness, because it really was just maybe 1 year when I lived across the hall from these people who played D&D. Anyways, so we stopped at, and then from there we brainstormed the entire story, my husband and I, and then we still had time on our drive, so we brainstormed because he's like, I've always thought it would be cool to write a story too, and so we brainstormed his story, and then we stopped at a little tiny grocery store slash convenience store up in the mountains, and we picked up note cards and pens and notebooks and proceeded to spend our long weekend with our boys plotting out our stories. Like our little hotel suite thingy was filled with note cards, and we were taping them into our notebooks in the order that the scenes should go. And I don't even know how we knew to do it, because it turns out that we weren't terribly wrong. I think I'd heard somewhere or read somewhere, I don't know. It was just, it happened. And so we made the goal. So that was October in 2002. And we made the goal that we would finish these books, write our first drafts by New Year's Eve of 2003. So we gave ourselves like 14 months to write these books. And by golly, we did it. We printed out our first drafts on New Year's Eve. And that whole thing, that October vacation and that New Year's Eve in 2003 really stand out in my mind. Like, those were major plot points in the story of my life. So that's when I started writing. That was in 2002. And so I've been writing for 19 years or so. Yeah. And then question number 9, or is it number 2, is what was the first story I ever wrote? Okay. So I had this D&D character, and her name was Frew, Frew, which is a Scottish surname that was my mom's middle name. That was super common for Scottish folks. I don't know if it still is a practice, but in 1933, when my mom was born, it was still a practice that that the middle name was often a surname. Like, well, anyways, okay. Like, I could tell you, my granny, my grandpa, my mom, my aunt, all have like a name and then a surname and a last name. The middle name is, okay, I don't know why the middle name is a family surname, not just some random one. Okay, moving on. So my D&D character, she was, I can't even remember. She wasn't a mage. I think she was like a human. How boring is that in D&D, right? My second character was a troll, and she was awesome. I should have written a story about her. But instead I wrote about Frew, who had a hawk and who was learning to be a wizard, but she was super, super, super low on the totem pole and had a long ways to go. But her backstory, this should have been my first clue when I was, how old was I about now? Like 20. This should have been my first clue at that time that I was meant to be a writer, because I gave this character this ginormous backstory. I wrote that she was a servant, like a daughter of a servant in a royal household, and some killers came from a warring fiefdom or kingdom or whatever, and killed every single person in the castle. But her mother had hid her away in like a, I don't know, like a laundry chute type thing, something, I don't remember. And so when Fru finally came out, everything was blood. There was just destruction everywhere. And she had seen through the cracks, as you know, you do, this symbol or something on the killer's uniforms. And so she vowed that she was going to take revenge on this other group. But she was just a girl, so she had to grow up. She had to learn the skills and all of that. And then there was this like book of true love that a bad guy wanted, but Fru had it, and it was like filled with spells or something, but you couldn't use them unless you had a pure heart or something. And so, and then I don't remember what happened from there. So that was the first story I ever wrote. Super purpley prose, like la 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 la, filled with adjectives, I'm sure, galore. And it was long and meandering, and I have reread it, and it's, it's got some good bones. I could probably make a story of it, but it's outside of my genre, my comfort zone, and not really one that I want to get into doing either. So yeah, it was my circular file book. All writers should probably have at least one to a handful or more practice books, I think. I mean, maybe not. Maybe you're the exception to the rule. And I have met, in fact, at a conference that I had in May that I attended, I was a coach for a first chapter group, and there was a guy in there, and it was his first ever book, and he's like, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to query it. And, I'm kind of like, that the likelihood that you're going to make a sale with your first book is kind of low, but okay. I'm not a dream crusher. I believe in supporting people in their dreams. Well, it turned out, as I critiqued his pages, they were phenomenal. Like, this guy just has the gift, right? And so I wouldn't be surprised if he does manage to sell that book. So not everybody's first books have to be practice books, but if you've got it in you to practice, I highly recommend it. A friend of mine, Elena Johnson, you may know her as Liz Isaacson. She's a very popular romance writer, particularly in the cowboy subgenre. So she wrote 11 practice books before she even ever attended her first writers conference. And she just thought, like, that's what you do. She was writing first to just kind of help herself get over a difficult time in her life. And then she realized she kind of liked writing, so she kept writing until she felt like she was good enough or something that now she was going to write an actual book. And most of us in line with her for the buffet lunch that first day of the conference were kind of in awe, because most of us hadn't even written 11 books total, not even including practice books or books that we were querying or whatever. And I think it served her extremely well, because by the time she really did sit down to write a serious, like not necessarily a serious, but a story on purpose, she already knew her method. She knew her style. She knew what she wanted to write about. A lot of us do that while we're querying and while we're kind of in the game, and so we have a lot of rejections and losses before we've even discovered ourselves and our voice. Whereas Elena, I bet it gave her some courage and confidence in her work that she already had figured out that stuff. So anyways, I only have one real practice book, although I do have books that I've written that I've chosen not to publish for one reason or another. But I think it's cool if you can write more than one practice books. So that was the first story I ever wrote. I could never really decide on a good title for it. I think I ended up landing on The Knotted Heart, and even that was corny. So anyways, next up, if I manage to figure out how to do the technical issues, I'm going to talk about the software I use to organize, to like for my book Bible, but also my writing life. And I'm super excited to talk about that. So stay tuned, I hope. I hope if you've found me that you'll give me a like and a subscribe, and a comment is awesome. I love comments because that's how you make friends, which is a lot of why I'm here. So have a great day, everybody. And I don't have a fun catchphrase for saying goodbye because I don't know the divine language for goodbye. So ciao for now. Bye.